What's up, everybody? Oh, you guys, it's Women Crush Wednesdays. Melissa Jo Peltier is about to join me. We got lots to talk about. Her pre-interview questions are amazing. Oh, let me put my my little microphone on here. I don't have it on. Let's put it on so you guys can hear me better. Let's see. What's up, you guys? It's all happening. It's all about to pop. Sue TV, all my work, everything that I've done, it's about to pop-a-rooney. No, we want... Oh, why isn't this plugged in? Oh, it didn't go in. There we go. All right. There we go, you guys. We're waiting for Melissa to come on. As soon as she figures it out, we're going to do it. I'm waiting for her to figure it out. There we go. Okay, let's see if she got it. Well, I'll talk to you guys for a little while. We're going to do Women Crush Wednesdays. I don't know why. I was just sitting there thinking, I don't know why anybody else hasn't thought of this idea. Why not do a show about women and their experiences being women? I feel like everything is so chaotic right now that it's like the sky is falling all the time that nobody's pulling it together and focusing. So that's what I'm doing. I'm pulling it together and I'm focusing and oh, there we go. Erin McGuire, I got to have you on this show. This is Women Crush Wednesdays. And I'm talking to all the women about what it's like being a woman. We got no haterade here. We don't hate nobody. We're just trying to figure out, let people hear what it's like to be a woman and put some air in it so we can figure it out. And I'm going to start Man Crush Wednesdays, which is funny because I get a lot of emails about when I'm starting Man Crush Wednesdays. But I got it for the girls. Okay, girl, how do I do this? All right. Go on IG. She's trying to figure out how to get on. Can you email? I got a whole shebang going on here. I got an assistant to join on live. All right, I'm gonna tweet at her. Why don't I just tweet at her? You guys, it's gonna start at 8 o'clock. She's supposed to come on right now so we can hang and get it together. But she's having a hard time figuring out how to join, so and request to join. You guys, will one of you guys try to request to join? I'm sure it works, but will you guys try to make sure? Because Melissa's having a hard time. And it's 7:54 and we're starting at 8 p.m. I wonder what happens if she doesn't figure it out. She will figure it out. So Women Crush Wednesday. So everybody wants to me to do Man Crush Mondays too, which I'm going to do. Oh yeah, there we go. I might as well have someone else. Oh, she, okay. Let's see. What's up, girl? How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you very much for doing that. And look at the internet is great. All right, awesome. Thank you. I'm waiting for Melissa. I just wanted to make sure it worked.
I'm out.
All right, good to see you. Thank you. All right, that looked cool. You know, Dean Edwards told me, because my internet kept cutting out on the guests, and I was like, so I emailed Dean, and I was like, how do you do it? He said, shut off the internet. Duh. And that was perfect. That internet was clean and clear. Now, if we could just get Melissa to go on. I have all her questions ready. She filled out in depth about being a woman. So, Man Crush Mondays is going to be, we're going to be talking to the men about how they've experienced what's going on with the women too, because I don't think we should get rid of the men. We're not going to get rid of the men. We're going to figure out a new way to operate, because there's a lot going on right now, and if you didn't notice, it's all crumbling. That GameStop thing is just so amazing. Even Dave, I don't like to say his name, Evans Medium, Men's Medium, is really mad. He's really mad at what they did. They're all so mad. They're mad at what the Reddit guys did. Very interesting, because there was a woman who tweeted today that that it's hurting hurting the wrong people, what the Reddit guys did. I'm like, you got to be able to separate. Like, people get so tunnel vision. It's like, okay, yes, the Reddit guys can be very toxic masculinity, but also you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. They just fucked the Wall Street guys so hard, and I love it. So that's what happened when I negotiated my deal with CBS. My guy friends were like, Sue, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. And I was like, if I was the old Sue, I would have been like, I'm not shutting up. I've been muzzled my whole life. I was like, Sue, listen, they're men. They know what's going on. And if I didn't shut up, what I tend to do, because I've been muzzled, is tell all my secrets. I show my hand. So you got to listen to the guys. And just because the guys on Reddit are toxic, they're horrific to me. But I still love what they did to the Wall Street guys. So that's what's happening everywhere. I talked about on Sue TV earlier. I talked about Dana White, about his deal with through Endeavor, his deal with ESPN for UFC. He had he had to deliver a whole bunch of fights, and then the pandemic happened. So then he had to make sure that he got that island together. He had to deliver those fights, so they were going to do what was equivalent to a margin call, which is what's happening to these Wall Street guys with the GameStop thing. They're getting a margin call. They didn't have the money. They're going to be fucked. And the Reddit guys did it on purpose. And that's what's happening. Also with Dana White, the UFC, he called out the hackers, and then the hackers went in and hacked his live stream, and now he has to give refunds. So you got to respect the enemy. Even I was talking about today about this whole talk about QAnon and about conservative thinking and how they're trying to block it all. It's like, you got to respect your enemy. Look what's happening. It's happening right in front of everybody's face. They just fucked Wall Street. They just fucked Dana White. I've talked about those Civil War guys and women. They've been planning for years and years and years and years and years, and people just disrespect them. As soon as QAnon became part of the vernacular, I was like, oh, we're in trouble. Not in trouble, but I mean, now we're in, it's serious. I said trouble because we're in trouble because I can't find Melissa. She can't get on. This is supposed to start at 8 o'clock. Eve, any word from her? She keeps messaging me everywhere asking me how to do it. She must know how to do this, right? I don't know. I'm going to have somebody else on. I'm going to have to invite another woman on if I can't get Melissa. But she answered such good questions. Let's see. Did you get it? This is what happens when you produce your own show. I like how good that looked when Mary came on, and the internet was really good. Let's see. Did you get it? She knows how to do it. I wonder if her Instagram is SCRIB, Scribe MJP. Scribe Melissa Jo Peltier. Yeah. I haven't even seen her sign on yet. And now it's 7:59. All right, she saw it. I'm here. She's here. Yay, Melissa. All right, now do you know how to go on now? Is there a way for you to request to be on my live broadcast? Is there a button for you to hit? That's all you have to do, and then you'll pop up. Mary just did it, so I know it's working. You just request to be on the live broadcast. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And I didn't even think of it, but Melissa's a writer, so she filled out all the information, all the questions. Last week we had Stacey Pressman. She's running for the mayor of New York City. Before that, we had Jackie Cation. Oh, there we go. Here she is, Melissa Jo Peltier. She's coming. I have to ask her exactly how to pronounce it. Peltier. Melissa!
I need sound. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hi.
Oh, good. So I have an iPad. It didn't work on my computer for some reason.
You have what?
I had to go to my iPad. The Instagram thing didn't work on my computer, but now I'm here. So off on my iPad. So we're good.
Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. I've never done an Instagram live. I do Zoom a lot. I do Skype. I do Facebook Live. I've done, but I've never done an Instagram live. So anyway, now I've got another thing on my resume.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Because people can write the comments, and I love to be able to, when they ask us questions about what we're talking about. Okay, so welcome. Your questions are, I didn't even think of it. I'm like, of course you filled them out so thoroughly. That was amazing because you're a writer.
It really made me think. I mean, you know, when you're going through stuff, and you know this, when you're going through a career in a male-dominated industry, you just put out of your mind that it's male-dominated and you're being screwed over. You have to put it out of your mind, or else you would go crazy or you would quit. And so I just put it out of my mind. But then you look back and you realize everything that was going on under the surface.
Oh my God, that's such a good point, because when I think about my stand-up career, my TV career, I had to pretend it wasn't happening. You have to
Right.
pretend. And if you really think about that, the correlations between that and the sexual assault stuff, the same thing happens. Like, I remember I was one of those people. I would say, I wasn't judging, but in my head, I would say, well, how come they don't say something? How come they don't say no? How come they don't? And a girl gave me a book to read, and I read it, and she said they don't say no because they're pretending it's not happening.
Oh yeah, and also, there was just no question when I was coming up that, this stuff happened all the time, and there was no question among so unspoken about women that you just don't, if you say anything about it, you will be labeled as a troublemaker and you will never get a job again. I mean, your career will go like that. And if it's important to you, which it really was to me at the time, and my career was my life for many years. So, that wouldn't have been, and I had a couple situations that were pretty dicey, but I always felt like I put myself in those situations. I blame myself. And the truth is, not everybody puts themselves in that. The situation that I was in was, it was a very famous, I'm not going to name until after this person dies, but very famous, beloved star.
Can I just point out that that's a very respectful, graceful woman thing to do, to say that you're going to wait till they die? I just want to point that out.
Well,
But go ahead.
if I had heard in Me Too that this guy had done this to like 50 other women, I might have done differently. But nobody got hurt, thank God. But it was a scary situation. It was somebody I had to do business with, and I was out of town with, and I had left a note at the front desk. Should we meet in the bar to talk? Oh no, 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 no. It's much too public there. Come to my room. I have a suite. I'm like, it was 11 o'clock at night. I was already in my jammies. So I thought, well, I have my makeup off. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to go up there, and I'm going to have a checklist, and we're just going to do it. And, as soon as he opens the door, he's got a glass of wine, and he's like, sit over here. And he doesn't have a suite. He has one of those sort of like extra large rooms. And he basically kept me in that room for like 2 hours, and he wasn't, it was just manipulative, because he had the power, and he knew I had to work with him the next day, and that it was my company's problem that was at stake. So I finally talked my way out of it, and nobody got hurt, but he did at one point come on to me at the end when he saw that I was really going to leave. He really came on, and what was ironic was he was supposed to get married the next week, which I brought up, which kind of stopped him cold for a second, and then I was able to get out of there. But but then I had to do business with him the next day, and I had to ride in the limo to the airport with him the next day, and it was like, oh, it was awful.
Okay.
Really awful.
It's beyond awful, but you're describing it, and now I want to reflect back what you said and have you say more about it. So first of all, the first thing that struck me was that you said, I didn't have makeup on. I was in my pajamas. Nothing's going to happen. I identify with that. When we dress down, we think we're not doing anything wrong. We think it's not going to happen to us. And that's not even an issue, but in our heads, we think we're doing, this is what it's like to be a woman. We have to make sure we're dressing down. We have to make sure when we're walking home at nighttime that we run. We have to make, men don't realize this because they've never been in a woman's body. They don't realize how terrifying it is at all times. And then you said the thing about, you mentioned his marriage, and then he woke up. I talked about this on my WTF with Mark Maron, which is funny because you're talking about a hotel room. Now, Mark Maron, I did 2 WTFs with him. I've known him my whole career, so this was going to be my 3rd. He was in New York, so he wasn't in the studio in LA. So I met him in New York, and I met him in a hotel room during Me Too. I had a relationship with him prior to, I would never think that he would try to intimidate me. Right? He didn't sexually try, but he physically tried to intimidate me so that I would say what he wanted me to say, and then he continued to edit my WTF and cut out all the powerful women negotiations that I had done.
Huh.
So the same idea. So the sex and the business. I'm trying to draw the parallels between the sex and the business and how they cloud the. So I said on my WTF that it's like they're acting like, I always say that it's the third boundary, that it's the third boundary that really sticks if you really stick to yourself. Because the first time when you say no, the shame that the guy who you're talking about, he's asleep. He's being like a monster, but he doesn't know he's a monster. If you go along with it, then he doesn't have to wake up to it. But if you say no.
I got the feeling this guy didn't get no a lot.
Yes.
But he wasn't a violent guy. He was a good guy, and that's another reason I'm not, but he I don't know how he got these signals from me, because I was always just like poker face around him. But he said, I'm a man, you're a woman, you've noticed me, I've noticed you. Isn't it about time? I mean, just like a lot of this stuff. And it was, like I said, I'm not going to name him because he is beloved. And I don't know if he's done this to other women. And he certainly wasn't violent. He was just power, pressure. And I realize now, because I've heard a couple of women say that they've gotten in the same situation with men who said, oh, no, it's too public in the bar. Or, oh, no, we can't go, oh, no, I can't work with that noise. I mean, everything, I think he planned it. I don't think it was spontaneous that I go up there and suddenly he gets this idea. I think he planned it, and that's what makes me mad.
Yes, and also let's walk through. Okay, so you're talking to this guy about doing business, and he says it's too public in the bar. So then they put you in the position to be the difficult one. This is what I want to make it clear to what goes on.
Because he is a really famous guy, and everyone would recognize him immediately.
Right. So let's walk through. But let's walk through. Right. So there's his cover, if you will. Right. He's famous, and so people will recognize him. And then we are groomed to be people pleasers, right? So we're like, oh, we don't want him to. That's our first reaction. Right. But also, let's walk through let's walk through for people who are watching, like what that would look like. Because sometimes I think we don't even walk through it because the fear and the shame and everything doesn't allow us to really walk through what was going to work out. If he said to you, not in the bar, it's too public. And if you said to him, I have to meet you in the bar. Discomfort.
Well, actually, the next thing I said was, why don't we just have breakfast an hour early?
And he said no.
No. He said, I'm on LA time. We were on the East Coast. I'm on LA time. I'm wired. Now it's a good time.
Again, pushing of the boundary. So the boundary was, let's meet in the bar.
Yeah.
Let's have breakfast. We're always angling, trying to make sure that we can protect ourselves. So you're like, okay, I can't meet in the bar because I'm famous. Nope, yeah. Not considering your feelings or your boundary at all. And he's famous.
In a city where people would have recognized him, but it wouldn't have been a big deal because it's a city where you see famous people all the time. So it was like, it wouldn't have been, I mean, everyone would have recognized him, yes, but they wouldn't have bothered him. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, but I didn't even think that because my mind was working fast. I was really tired. I was almost in bed. I'd left a note, we're going to meet for breakfast in the morning. And, I just, I really felt like, oh shit, I can't fuck this up.
Yeah. Yeah, you can swear all you want.
I'm somebody who doesn't swear a lot, but when I talk about work, sometimes I do.
So I want people just to, as we talk, to hear all the machinations and all the ways that we have to try to just get our job done. And it's not just Hollywood. It's women who work in offices. We have to avert passes. We have to make sure we dress correctly. We have to make sure when we walk home at nighttime that we look behind us. There's so much that goes into doing business as a woman, and there's so much manipulation from the aspect of the male, these predator males. They are predators, regardless of how far they go or whatever. Anybody who uses power to overpower a woman is a predator.
And anyone who premeditates that, it wasn't like we were dating. It wasn't like there was any email, maybe we can get together romantic. First of all, again, he was supposed to get married the next week. So, it was really out of the blue for me. But I mean, I had dread when I was going up there. That's why I had, as you said, I had tried to set those boundaries. And, people ask me like, why did you even go? Well, this is a huge star who is doing business with my little company. And there may be a lot at stake in what we have to do the next day. It was a big pitch, and I got to do it.
Okay. So that's the thing that I've been talking a lot about on Sue TV on my new show, is this whole blaming the victim instead of the predator. Blaming the victim instead. Why did you even go up there? Why did you even go up there? You just said you had dread in your body. You said you're tired. Your boundaries are being pushed. You're being manipulated. The person has much more power and fame than you, and they're still saying, why did you even go up there? It's like, and my thinking is because it's time for people to start realizing that this is really, really bad. That this is really bad, and they have a hard time seeing that it's bad, and they might have done their own behavior. A lot of men right now are struggling with what they might have done in the past, so it's easier to just say, right?
Right, and I think, I do think there's good men who've done it only because society gave them permission. Why not? Everybody does this, and that not to the extent that what I would just describe to you, but I think there's good men who tried to who've read singles wrong and gotten pushy. But there's a huge difference in that and power. It's really ironic because my beautiful stepdaughter, who at the time was, I think she was 25, she had a similar experience happen to her at work during the whole Me Too thing. And fortunately, her company, I think he probably had done something like this before, but it was a sort of thing where he put her in a situation where, you know, she was sort of compromised and then she had to find a way to get out, and she was crying, she was shaking. And I was so upset. I'm like, I thought Me Too meant she would never have to go through this, but some asshole decided to try it. But anyway, it's her company fortunately severed his contract. She did not star, but I think her bosses and the people in her office were aware enough of what this guy was doing, and I'm certain he must have done something like that before. That he was a freelancer, but he had a lot more power. That they severed his contract.
So that's a good. So it did happen again after Me Too, but the good thing is that they severed his contract, which would never happen before.
Yes.
So there is movement forward with.
But she was afraid to go to HR for that reason.
I don't blame her. Even my mother said to me when I was dealing with all my stuff with CBS, my mother even said to me, she goes, even I know not to go to HR. And it's true because everybody wants to bury.
Dorchester?
You what?
Does your mother still live in Dorchester?
No, she lives in Hingham, but she still has a Dorchester accent.
You know, I have a house on Cape Cod.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I grew up in Massachusetts.
Oh, nice. I feel like someone else did. Oh, another girl who just messaged me. There's a lot of Mass people that are yeah. Cool. All right. Yeah. So I want to.
Well, you know, I never really had an accent, but when I moved to LA, I never really. My mother always told me, "Oh, you shouldn't have an accent." My mother was very blue-blood Yankee, and my dad had an accent, and he was from Worcester, so I kind of didn't have one. And then once I went to California and I was there for 20 years, I just like missed it so much. And I would go home and it was like music to me. I love your accent. It's like music.
Thank you. Thank you. I keep it. I've had like, I have a play that I do, and I went on a theater radio show, and the lady was like, I remember the first thing, as soon as I put the headphones on and as soon as the radio, she goes, why do you talk like that? And I said, oh, I think that the fact that I talk like this reminds you that I'm blue collar, and that makes you uncomfortable. And she goes, well, yes, it does. I love it.
That's good. That's smart. That's smart.
And then she saw what she was doing.
Well, I think that's how my mother felt about it. She wasn't a snobby person in any way, but I think she was just raised with that. You know, my grandmother went to Wellesley. She went to Wellesley. But my father was definitely, and we used to laugh because he had an assistant named Masha, Masha.
Yeah.
And another person who worked with him named Marcia.
Uh-huh.
He would talk about Masha, and my mother would say, which one? Because they were both Masha.
Oh, yeah. That's like, where are your car keys? They're in my car keys. Hold on. I found out that I was married when his wife called. Oh, somebody's telling me something about a guy.
Oh,
about a guy that they found out he was married when his wife called while I was asleep in his bed. Oh, I got the short end. Yeah.
Yeah.
That happens a lot. And the other thing that I was going to say about your situation is that when you think somebody's getting married the next week too.
Oh yeah, exactly. That was one of the things I told myself. I'm like, look, I'm you know, I have no makeup on. I'm in my sweatpants. You know, I'm just going up with my little clipboard. I made sure I had my clipboard, and that was in the days of clipboards. And you know, I mean, and he's getting married next week.
Yeah, you would never, I mean, all these things you'd have to start thinking, which is what we're doing because we're all communicating now, and Me Too happened. We would have to start thinking like them to protect ourselves. But how would we think like them if they were holding the power and not telling us anything? So, and none of us were talking. I had a situation in Vegas where I was getting paid, the guy who was opening for me was getting paid more than me. And I went on stage. I didn't go on right away once I found out because I knew I would act out. So I waited. And the second time I went on purposely and said it. And the audience went wild. They were like, time's up, time's up. And it was the first time I made the connection with how much we keep it all a secret. Oh, yeah. I saw the audience never knew. And I'm like, oh, the audience is supporting me. It's just the abuse that's happening in the dark that's keeping us down.
Well, I told my business partners who were both male, and they were pretty outraged by it. But you know, obviously, and actually they were pretty cool about it. They're like, you know, because the project that we tried to pitch didn't go through, and well, but my partners were like, you know, we're never going to work with this guy again. Don't worry. You know, I don't care how big and famous he is. We're never going to work with him. and they kept to that. So at least
They did keep to that.
Yeah.
Okay, because I like to, as much as we're talking about the bad stuff, I like to point out that your daughter it happen to her, but they did get rid of the guy. So there is good stuff. And these guys that you worked with didn't work with them. They kept their word. So I'm trying to decipher between, because what I'm realizing a few things. They have 3 moves, these guys, that we never got together to be able to figure out that they have 3 moves.
Right.
And now we're figuring them out, and it's like easy to beat them.
Right.
And the other thing is that there's a lot of good guys that are good guys, but they had a hard time believing that these men were doing this. So it was easy to say that we were crazy because they couldn't believe that a man would fuck their whole career to hurt a woman. They can't comprehend it because they don't act like that. So there was a disconnect.
They knew that I called them. It was like midnight or after midnight. And so it was 3 hours earlier. So I called one of them at home and my voice was shaking. I was shaking because it was like, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know how I was going to get out of that room because he kept making it, he brought other people in and it was like, he kept making it like impossible for me to get up and leave. And
describe that a little bit more, will you please? I just want people to understand. So
like sitting on one side of the room and he wants me to sit on the bed to work with him. And I'm like, no, I'm going to sit over here. So I'm sitting way in the corner of the room at this table. And
because he lied, because he told you it was a suite, first of all, right?
Right.
Okay.
And I think we paid for it, so probably it's our fault. But I don't book rooms.
Oh,
at the time,
but he still said suite. So he still said suite. So all the confusion, I'm too famous, it's a suite.
The living room, but even then, you're alone with a guy who has more power than you. And I just honestly, I was no spring chicken. I just didn't think I was like the kind of person you'd hit on. To be honest with you, at that age. And it was, how old was I? Well, I wasn't that old, I guess. I guess I was in my, I think I was in my like mid 30s. So I guess I was cuter then. But I think that, I just didn't think of myself that way. But at the same time, I have to say, definitely when I was younger, I did use a little bit of that flirtatious energy with men that I worked with, not to seduce them, but just like to get what I wanted. And that's important because that's like the soft power that women have. And men always say, well, you flirted with me. Well, no, I really didn't. But I used that energy because it made you more receptive to listening to me and doing what I wanted to do. And I do admit that because I look back on it and I'm like, obviously I wouldn't do that now. I'm a lot older, but not any promise of anything, but just, you know what I mean? The energy.
My friend. Okay. So Patricia just said we all did because the dynamic was set up that way, that it was an unspoken agreement.
Yep.
It was the only way to survive.
I was the person who did.
Say it again.
But I know I wasn't the only person who did because a lot of my contemporaries did too.
But also, if you really think about the way, I've been on so many business meetings, like TV business meetings, like business meetings, or even with agents, and they think it's a date. Like you're having a business meeting and they think it's a date, and you're like, how do I even?
Also, the whole thing in the entertainment business is, it's like permission to kiss and hug and touch. It's like permission. Oh, hello. You meet at an awards dinner. Hello. And it's like, I don't know, other businesses that I don't think are like that, but it's like that instant permission. It's like, well, gee, I met you once at a pitch meeting and you didn't buy my project and suddenly you're, but that's another thing that sort of underscores the message there.
That's interesting because I've made a rule that I don't do any hugs in business meetings. I don't let anybody touch my body.
Always a really huggy person. And in that way, I was very naive.
But I'm just saying I made that even more recently because I'm like, no, why do you have to hug me? Don't touch me. And the other thing is, let's walk through again. We walk through like what it would look like if you said you don't want to go downstairs to the bar. Like, let's really walk through it. I've had men come up to hug me that I don't even really know. And I've said, oh no, I'm not hugging today. And the anger that you get from them.
Oh yeah.
The entitlement. The 2,000 years of entitlement. You said like guys always did this. This is 2,000 years that we're trying to turn here. So it's not, I have compassion that it's 2,000 years, but I'm also not going to do it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other thing I want to talk about what happened with COVID is a good excuse now. Yeah, I find that interesting. I find it very interesting.
Right. That's right.
right? That the Me Too movement happened, then all of a sudden COVID happened. We were all
Maybe
doing
it'll
this.
break some habits.
Yes, yes. There's always a silver lining. So what I realized during Me Too, this is what really got my fucking hair across my ass. So what the rule that they made up during Me Too in Hollywood was that they would, and I don't know if they did this in other businesses, but they would have a woman in the meeting. They couldn't have a man and a woman, a man of power in a room with a woman. They had to have another woman in the room. Which I understand, because if you had two men, it would be even double power. But what really happened with that was just kind of a cover. They didn't really change. What they did was they took a woman of equal stature, whether it's an attorney or an agent, and they made them become the watchdog. So now they're knocking down another woman, and then they make that woman feign empathy with the woman in the room so that the guy can still fuck you business-wise. So they actually, it's that no, don't let a good crisis go to waste. That's what they did. Yeah, a witness, but a witness, it was more than a witness. It was somebody to coerce us, just like the women who brought the women to Harvey.
Well,
just
yeah,
like,
Harvey. I never had that experience. I was in a lot of rooms with mostly men and just men. But, you know, as in a behind the camera, you know, I was, you know, with crews that were all men. I think almost, no. I had a lot of crews that like would show up with a woman maybe out in the field. We had one woman, sound woman, that we used a lot. And my I did one film with a female cameraman who's now really famous, which is so great. But cameraman, see, listen to me. DP. But, you know, I mean, I was in those situations a lot. But there was a feeling among, first of all, I was the power person.
mm-hmm.
I was
okay.
Director,
so that's interesting. Okay.
So, you know, I did have sometimes to deal with, like when I first started directing, I was 30, but I got in the DGA when I was 29. Hold on a second. Yeah?
It's your husband interrupting you.
Yeah.
He's sabotaging you. Too much women power.
But I was like, I was 30 years old, and I got braces, and I looked very young, and I was 30 years old, and I really, for the most part, really knew what I was doing, and I had to play all sorts of games to try to get taken seriously. You know, a lot of women, I did the opposite of what a lot of women do, which is to, you know, sort of act really tough. I just acted very casual and always was way over prepared. Way over, you know, I would be up all night. I would, if I was on the road, I would go to my room, and instead of going to the bar with the crew, I would go upstairs and watch all the footage on I just would overwork. So I was way ahead of everybody. But I also, one thing that I did do was I asked questions of some of the older guys, which sort of softened them up. Mm-hmm. You know, they're like, oh, she sees that I'm older and more experienced. And even though, and they would do what I wanted them to do. I mean, there's some famous sexists out there that I worked with who were very, very good to work with for me. I found them very respectful. But I also, this guy is dead now, so I can say Michael Landon refused to work with a woman director on a show that I was partially directing and producing. I had to bring in a male director to direct him, even though I was the one making the decisions. And
so Michael Landon straight up said, I will not have a woman director, and you were the boss, and you had to do what he wanted you to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I was directing him in a voiceover, I gave him one bit of direction, and he said, this isn't an infomercial or something like that. I mean, it was like, boom. I mean, I've never had anyone talk to me like that. As a voiceover person, you know, that rudely. And it was like, okay. And I was also with my
male ego. It's the male ego. Their response is so, doesn't match the crime. It doesn't match. It's so out of control. Okay. So first of all, I want you to tell us a little bit about your background. I do a little research, but I'd rather come from you because I want you to vocalize your career. I don't want to talk it at you. I want you to speak it to the world. I want you to own your power and tell us what you did with your career.
Well, first of all, right now, pitch what I'm doing right now. It's a documentary. We formed a pact to do it. Mary Carey Craven is my producer on it, and she's awesome. She would have a lot of interesting stories for you. She was a
Okay,
producer.
well, maybe we'll have her. Yeah.
She was a producer on a lot of shows that filmed in Maryland, you know, over the years. But so I have a documentary which I'm looking for distribution for. It's almost done. We had to really piecemeal our post-production because we didn't have any money. And we were like watching the Lincoln Project raise all this money and everything. But it's a
All right,
documentary.
say that a little slower. You were watching the Lincoln Project. Explain to people what the Lincoln Project is.
Oh, that's a pack of Republicans who helped Trump not get unelected. But you just watch them get millions and millions of dollars, and you know, we didn't even need $1 million. We wanted like 150,000, but we couldn't raise it. We did raise about 50,000, but most of the money was my husband and I, our company, we put in. And it's in 2 hours, a feature documentary, and it's 5 stories of people who changed their mind about Trump. And it really unpacks how they decided and how they changed their mind and what changed their mind.
Meaning they were voting for Trump, and then they changed their mind to not vote, or the opposite?
They didn't vote in 2020. They voted in 2016. And we have like a farmer, we have a veteran, we have a teen Republican, and Joe Walsh. And then we have a bunch of evangelicals, and it's really anyway. We have our website is www.americandignity.com. AmericanDignityPack.com. And you can see 4 of the 5 stories there because we've been releasing them as individual stories, but we're about to put the whole thing together. We have 1 more story and a little bit of animation to put in now. But anyway, so that's what I'm doing now.
Do you have any place that you're fundraising for the rest of the film, or no? Is there anywhere anybody can go?
Now I just need a distributor.
Okay.
I mean, I'm past the point. I would like to make some money on it to be able to pay some deferrals, but because a lot of people gave a lot of time and volunteered and worked for either nothing or very little. But you know, that was a passion project of mine. I just decided I had to do it. And so that's been like my latest thing. And then backtracking, my husband and I are just about to make another short film. We just started doing this a few years back, and we just fell in love with doing it. So he got hired to do a short film in Paris for Marriott. It was like a, you know, branded entertainment. And it was so much fun that we just started making them on our own. So it's going to be starring Sebastian Roche and Alicia Hanna, who are husband and wife. But anyway, can you repeat the site?
Oh, you can see the comments. Oh, good. Okay, yeah.
It's www, obviously, American Dignity, DIGNITY, PAC.com. And we have a YouTube channel too. But they're good pieces, and I think what I wanted was for people to show them to their softer Trump. I mean, obviously not, these people did not storm the Capitol, but they're people who might be on the fence about him. But anyway, so that's what I'm doing now. I started wanting to be a writer, director, producer, and I wanted to be in dramatic, and I really did want to do that. I was an actress, and I was, you know, a stage director, and I loved everything about theater, and I did all that from the time I was 4, really. And that's what I really wanted to do. But you know, I came into the business without any backing or money. My parents had no money. My mother died when I was 22, and you know, I was really kind of on my own. And so I immediately got a job out of an internship I had while I was in college. I went to Pomona College in Claremont, California, which is an awesome school and still is. And I did a couple internships with Hollywood because it was 40 minutes away. And I got a job immediately out of that. But then when that job was over, I had no contacts. I knew nothing. And so I walked up it was the KTLA lot at the time, to Arnold Shapiro's office. And I don't know if anyone knows who he is, but he was a real powerhouse in the industry for a while. He did Scared Straight, which won an Oscar and like 4 Emmys. And he did Rescue 911, and he did the last like 5 seasons of Big Brother before he retired. But he is one of the people that I worked for who was a good guy. a really good guy, and he hired women, and he used to always say women worked harder, but he would hire women in positions of power. He liked to have women in positions of power. All his producers except one toward the were
This
all
is,
women.
I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. This is one of the questions, the answers that you put in the questions, that he hired women because they were detail oriented and they were
Right.
better. Okay. And this is back when? How many years ago? Like what year?
God, this is 1984.
Okay, so this is a man in power in 1984. So, I mean, it makes sense because I always thought, why? There was Lucille Ball, there was Mary Tyler Moore, there was Carol Burnett, there were all these women, and then all of a sudden somehow women weren't funny. I'm like, when did that happen? So you're speaking to the fact that there were men who thought women.
He was, no, he really, and he had, I mean, I was a PA on a show he did, and
explain to people what that is. They don't know what that is.
Sorry, production assistant, which is
okay.
It was a show about pets, and my job was basically driving pets around LA, driving like weird pets like snakes and but on that set, everybody was a woman. It was like everyone who worked on the set was a woman, except in the crew aspect of it. And it was one of my first jobs, and it was really interesting. And then I went to a company called Dave Bell Associates, which isn't around anymore, but Dave Bell was really well known for hiring women in producer positions too. For the reason of probably they cost less, but definitely because he just felt like he could just trust women to get it done. He didn't have
but
to
that's interesting because they cost less was probably in part of it. That's interesting.
I'm sure it was part of it, but but I don't think it was. It was part of it, but wasn't everything, because eventually the women he worked for would catch on and need more money.
Okay, good.
Yeah, eventually you started to ask for real money. But so I was really fortunate there. And when I went to Dave Bell, I worked on a show called On Campus, which was a show for KCET back in the fairness doctrine days, which had to have public interest shows. And it was a show about all the independent colleges, and I was the intern for Pomona when I was in college, who helped them set up shoots and stuff. So that I got that job out of that, and I was an associate producer of that show out of the box, and then I became like a producer, writer, director on it too. Not the producer, writer, director, but a staff one. And it was sort of like, I wanted to go to graduate school, but I had no money, and I had like $35,000 in college loans to pay back, which sounds like nothing. And so, hey, Mary.
Mary.
That's my producer on our films. She's awesome. She's of course, but she's had some issues with men on the set too, and she has.
I have to have Mary on. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think all of us of a certain age have. Really.
I think all of us, every age has.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
You just said your daughter.
It's right. That's right. Yep. Very big public. I think it's a public corporation too. But
I think it's up to us. I think our generation is the generation that has to do it for the younger gen. Like we have to. We like Opie. I did Opie's podcast. I don't know if you know who Opie and Anthony. They used to be like the epitome. So I did Opie, and he asked me. He's like, "Sue, do you think you'll see the benefits in your lifetime?" And I'm like, "It doesn't matter." I feel like we're called as a generation. We have to do it. We can't be like, "Oh, those girls." We can't be like, "Oh, I had to suffer. They suffer. They have to suffer too," because nothing will ever change. Yeah.
No. And it's interesting because my husband is one of the good guys. He's had he and a lot of male directors are now on the bottom of the list because of diversity. There's like a huge diversity push, which I'm sure will even out at some point. But he's like bittersweet about it because he wants to be doing some of these jobs, but at the same time, he's like, yeah, but I like right out of the box, I had this amazing career and nobody questioned me. And I was, and he knew that an AD that he used to work with quite a bit, a female AD, I worked with men who said that women couldn't be first ADs because they weren't authoritative enough. But he basically said, I know I had it easy. And now it's time for somebody else, even though I don't want to stop. And he understands. And I think that's the attitude we should have. We should have an understanding that, and that's part of telling the stories is that too, part of telling our own stories, because I look back and it was very different from when I was living it. When I was living it, I had blinders on, it was like, you know, you were never going to tell on somebody else. You were never going to, you might not come back to a job, but while you were in the job, you were not going to make a big stink about.
But that's interesting what you just said. You might not come back to a job because that man who sent the dick pics to the woman, I forget the guy's name right off. That just triggered. I would have had it in my notes if I remembered to talk, if I knew I was going to talk about this. But that guy who sent the dick pics to the foreign correspondent, she quit her job. He sent 62 dick pics to her.
Oh,
with no response. With no response. She quit her job back when he did it. He just got fired. But he sent 62 dick pics to her and she quit her job. So you saying we never went back to a job. It's like we skip over it. Oh, you never went back to a job. It's like we lost our fucking jobs because men were sending 62 dick pics. And not until Me Too happened did anybody ever do anything. And I do have compassion for your husband. I feel like especially white men are struggling right now.
White
because
men are very much
over 50? Oh, even younger than 50. They're all struggling.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
Because, and it's funny because they have to see a little bit of what it feels like, because that's the only way, especially men, that's the only way they grow, right?
That's his attitude toward it. You know, but on the other hand, you know, it's weird for him because but he's very gracious about it because he does get it. And he saw, you know, I was told that the best way to direct, you know, episodic or TV movies or whatever was to come up through the AD program in the DGA. And it was a very rigorous program, and you had to be an AD for like 20 years. And then once you had been an AD for 20 years, you could maybe talk somebody into letting you direct. And my husband had an AD, female AD, and he later on she was able to get some directing jobs, but it was, you know, I mean, it was just so many years later, and she's not on a roster, because now she's in the age group where they're looking for younger. So, you know, she directed a feature and there was some big problem with the executive producers who recut it. I mean, she had a really bad experience. So, you know, that's not a path. There really is no path to anything in this business. You just have to find your own way somehow.
But why does age matter when it comes to being a director? I get it. I don't.
Oh my God, it shouldn't matter. It should be, you know,
nobody sees you.
It should be better.
Yes, you should be better at your job. Yes.
Ditto with writers too.
Also, but that's what I don't understand here. Okay, so ageism happens with writers and directors, but it doesn't happen with the president of the United States. They're all fucking 78 and 79 years old, but for some reason, when you're a writer or director, you're too old. The world is totally fucked. We're totally fucked, and I'm hopefully going to do my part to get it back into balance. I'm going to start my Man Crush Wednesday. My Man Crush Monday show after I give the women. Oh yeah, because I want to hear the man's point of view too, because I don't want to get rid of them. I have compassion. I understand. I do.
You know, there's so many good men out there, and I was very fortunate to have two bosses who allowed me to start at a high level. And I was able to do a lot. I did years of television as a freelancer, as a freelance segment director, and also as a producer and director and writer of various like big specials. And
what kind of specials? What? Because that's a hard job.
Nonfiction. Like I don't know if you heard of Scared Silent and Break the Silence.
Yeah.
They were both films on child abuse, and they got huge audiences. And Scared Silent was simulcast on all the networks when there were only 4. and this is before Fox even. And but it was you know, so I did some really pretty big stuff in that area, but I was always working for somebody else. And then in 1996 or 6 or 7, I think, I formed a company with 2 male partners who I'd known for a long time. And we did hundreds of hours of television. We had a very successful show, The Dog Whisperer.
Oh, yeah. And
then we also owned a script that became My Big Fat Greek Wedding. So we had a little piece of that too. So we had a couple good ones in there. And the company went kaput, and which I'm happy. I moved back here before it ended. I moved back to get married, but I wanted to move back. I'd had it with LA. You know, I lost my house in the earthquake, and I mean, it was like I just had it. And I was just tired of the whole, in the industry, there's sort of an unspoken thing. And I didn't notice it really until I came back here and started noticing that people weren't like that. But, you know, the first thing somebody will say to you, oh my God, it's my husband. Hello.
Hi, we've been talking about you. Good stuff. We've been saying good stuff about you.
Yeah, he's awesome. But, what was I just saying? I'm sorry.
You were saying that you didn't realize LA until you left.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, you know, I mean, it's such a company town that anytime you get together with people, usually they're from the business, and the first thing they'll say to you is, what are you working on now? Rather than, how are you? Is your father feeling better? You know, I mean, and I just really got sick of that. I grew up well, Massachusetts has a lot of communities, and I grew up in a New England community, and I miss that. I miss that feeling, and I'm so happy to be back. I live in New York now, but we have a house on the Cape, which is great.
We're on the Cape, but you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. Provincetown, beautiful. I've never been to Provincetown. We almost drove there. I didn't even know you could drive there. I almost drove there with my boyfriend. I was like, he's like, I'm like, I thought you had to take a boat, and I'm from here. Next in the summertime, I'll come to Providence.
Yeah, you could take
hopefully, yes, and hopefully they'll be doing stand up by then. Hopefully, I can do stand up.
You should do stand up there. They have a lot. They're really pro women.
Yeah. Leah Delaria, Rosie, all those, they all do it. Yeah. All right. So I want to get to the questions because I love that you took the time, and I don't want to skip over that. You were so in depth, and I find it so fascinating. Okay. So when in your career do you first remember a man getting preferential treatment because of his gender? And then you talked about the two powerful men. Producer does, which is arranging everything, creators. Women were starting to make headway in writing at this time. Okay. When is the moment in your childhood that you saw boys get better treatment? I was a kid in the late 60s and 70s. It wasn't that they got preferential treatment. It was that they were always chosen to be leaders. And that's in capitals. They were always chosen to be leaders.
Yeah. I mean, that was the difference. And I'll tell the little anecdote about my film, because my dad, I grew up in a family where I didn't feel like I felt like a normal person until I was a teenager. And then suddenly I realized that women aren't people, but, which was a real shock. And I got depressed and all sorts of things because it was like, wait a minute. But as a kid, my parents, I was an only child, and we lived with my grandmother who was Wellesley College class of 1913, you know, back when like 3% of people in the US had a college degree. She did, and she couldn't even vote. And my mom,
she had a college degree and she couldn't even vote.
They didn't vote until 1921.
And then I don't want to skip over. I don't want it to get lost that you said I realized women were people.
Yeah, I realized that women.
I know.
And but we were. My dad loved film, and he was obsessed with it. He was kind of a absent-minded genius kind of guy. He loved film. He loved American Songbook. He loved Broadway. And so he taught me how he had gone to photography school. He was a professional librarian. He was management at the public library, and he started. But he was very, just like, you know, I don't know. He just wanted me to do all the things that he did, you know. So I went to work with him, and he taught me how to edit film, and he taught me how to, like, you know, he would wake me up in the middle of the night and to watch a movie on the Late Show. And, you know, my grandma thought it was horrible, but he wanted me to see it because it was so important for my education. And my mother was incredibly supportive. Anything I wanted to do, she believed I could do. So it was normal to me that my dad and my dad shot it, but I edited it, wrote it, and directed it. Made a film when I was 9. It was a very simple film, but I took it to school, and the boys in the class did not come. They all looked very troubled. They looked very they got really kind of cold to me after that, except one who I later gay, but you know, like 40 years later. But it was really interesting, and they started talking about the films they were going to make and how they films. It was like I was doing something that boys were supposed to do, and they felt like you could, even at that age, and it was like 4th grade or something. Mm-hmm. Even at that age, they felt like threatened.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were all talking about the films they were going to make, and they all sounded so much better than mine. They're going to have explosions and car chases, and they're going to, and they're going to, they were all planning and talking all around me, so I'd hear it. And I know they never made them. They never made those films.
They're all a bunch of blowhards. I figured it out. I figured out all their game. They got 3 moves and a bunch of blowhards. But yes, that affects you. My niece, so you said, you don't know if it my niece, who was only 12 at the time, maybe 11, we were sitting at the beach and we were talking, and for some reason she just said at soccer, she said, why do boys get treated better? She just said it right out of her mouth. I was like, oh my gosh, it affects you at such a young age, and then it gets imprinted on your adult life.
But
and
at least I didn't notice it. I really felt it was something about me, I was doing wrong, or I mean, I never felt like it's so unfair that boys get to do these. I just felt like I have to work harder.
It's funny you say that, because I definitely took note when you said, when you were directing, that you had to be extra prepared. Yes. So there's the callback. So I always like to make the connection. So as a child, you learned you had to work harder as a girl, and there it is. It shows up again in your career later on when you say, I have to be prepared. I can't go to the bar. I can't hang around. You had to work harder. It's a lot of emotions that women had to exert to be able to survive and be seen, like you said, to be a person.
Yeah, because once you sort of develop sexuality, you're not considered a person. I remember I was in junior high school. I was dating this boy who thought it was hilarious that I mowed the lawn. And my dad worked all the time, and he worked on weekends and he worked at night, and because he started this film series, and he he worked really hard, and then he came back late, and usually I would do stuff with him on the weekends, but the lawn had to be mowed, and we had a push mower, and it was either my mother or me who mowed it. And later on, it was always me, because I didn't want my mother to have to mow it. And he just thought that was like the most incredibly bizarre thing, that I mowed the lawn and shoveled the snow. And, it's like, but of course I did. People do that. But I wasn't a person. You're a different category, one down. And
one down. And it's funny, it brings to mind the movie posters. How I don't know if people notice this, but on a movie poster, the male lead is always full body. The woman lead is always piecemeal. There's always a piece of her body.
Interesting. I didn't notice that. That's really
they piecemeal us. It's so much subconscious. I mean, if you think about how many times I've thought over the years, how many commercials I've heard that, it's a girl, boys are better. You hear it a lot, even in the vernacular, in the commercials and everything.
I mean, and also in literature. I mean, when I was growing up, I mean, my hero was Louisa May Alcott, and my middle name is from the book Little Women. My mother named me that for that reason. But she was, I mean, she was writing under a pen name for a while, and of course, this is back in the Civil War era. But it's really interesting, because the protagonists of most books that women read in my era were male. And you just absorb, for me, I would just like deeply I still go deeply into books and absorb the protagonist, and, empathize and see the world through that person's eyes. And you just automatically, I as a woman just automatically became that guy, the protagonist, or the boy. And the same thing with TV series then. There were no TV series about girls. There was like Leave It to Beaver, and there was, Andy Griffith had a son, and nobody had a daughter. If they did, the daughter was a secondary character.
Mm-hmm. Still to today, if you watch the movies, it's always the woman's just the supporting wife. That's always. It's never. That's why I started the show, because I'm like, why don't I just do it? Why don't I just start focusing on women? Why don't I just bring a woman forward? I can do it. Yeah. That's why I started this. That's why I did this Women Crush Wednesdays.
That's great. That's a great idea.
Because you're talking, and you're coming alive as you're talking. You're becoming. You're saying out loud your whole life. It's like we're so all this minutia that you're talking, like we don't need all the bullshit. Like, let's talk about what your career is, what it was like for you, because that's how we're going to navigate through it. Even all this stuff about like who's lying, who's not, who's accusing, who's not, I'm going to get away from that. Let's just bring out the conversation of what goes on, because that's really how the power dynamic is going to change. Because getting rid of men or accusing people and not accusing people and it's not getting us anywhere.
No, but I do think often the pendulum has to swing too far to come back to the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's there now. I mean, I think a lot of people would argue, but you know, that's why I really, like, I admire, I told you, Ava DuVernay, because she started in this business like in the early 2000s. When, you know, nobody was, I mean, I worked with a handful of Black crews while I was working. In the producing, you know, in the upper, I didn't work with anybody who was colored, of any color. I don't mean colored, I mean POC. Yes. But
everybody's so nervous now. It's okay. We have to be able to talk.
Yeah. I didn't work with that. I mean, you know, above the line just didn't happen.
Well, that's what's interesting.
Later,
so when you said
later in my career, I started working with like this wonderful director who's African American, and then some other female, and a bunch of other people. But it was later. It was like in the, you know, post 2008, and I really feel like she worked hard to break through, and she did it. You know, she didn't have what they have now, diversity quotas and everything. I mean, she did it, and she really had she has the career. I always noticed like that. I wish I had, but I'm so excited that she has it. And
I respect your honesty.
No, I mean, I do.
I do.
And, you know, it's like on paper, it might look like I had a really great career, but it doesn't feel that way to me. And I was talking with a really good girlfriend of mine who's a very famous and super respected child neuropsychologist. And she was saying how she felt like she hadn't achieved what she wanted in her career. And you haven't? Are you kidding? And she's like, you haven't? Are you kidding? And she said, you know, we have to remember that we were working with a thumb on the scale, a big white male thumb on the scale, and we had to take that into account, and we did the best we could with that in account, and we both did pretty well.
Well, the whole purpose of me having the show is because I understand the feelings. There's a lot of feelings that are attached to the oppression that we've lived with. But by me having the show, my hope is to bring it out, to give a voice so that you continue on, and then you start reflecting back. Like you said, when you read the questions and you're like, you know, that was fucking hard. I did do a good job. And then you can keep moving. Like conversation, talking through something helps people. We were never allowed to talk to each other. They divide and conquered us.
That's true. That's true.
And now we're talking. I guarantee you, I mean, everybody who's done this so far has emailed me and they've been like, Sue, that was amazing. Thank you. Stacy's running for mayor in New York City. She did, Stacy Pressman. She did it last week. She didn't have a handle completely on her policies or what she was standing for. While we talked, I was able to be like, okay, that's what you said. And then you said that. And then she got clearer about that's what we should be doing for each other. Women, but we weren't even allowed to talk. We were divide and conquer. They only gave us one little thing, so we all had to fight over it.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. And you know, you saw a lot of that. My male partners used to make me like dress really frumpy and put on fake glasses before I wore glasses, because they felt that female executives were threatened. You know, and I was like, really? But maybe they were.
But this is good conversation to have because they were forced to be threatened. Just like I told you, the Me Too office, when we were in the office, they forced the women that were of equal caliber to monitor me and make them just so the guy could win. So they were degrading the women by making them come in the office to be a witness. That's what they're doing with those other women. So we have to have this conversation come out so the air gets in it so that people start being conscious of it.
It's like, you know, who's daddy's favorite kind of thing.
Yes, and then that triggers all that. They set it up that way.
And that triggers competition, which is what they want between us. So
hold on, it's difficult when you're the age of Christine. I can't see it. Everything, some of them from getting work. The age. So I just said the thing about age, and I'm going to keep saying this. The president is fucking 78 years old. Go fuck yourself with your ageism. Go fuck yourself. I'll say it every day with your stupid fucking ageism, all right? Fuck off and fuck you.
Well, you know, entertainment likes people to be pretty, and it likes people to be new. It's always into the next new thing.
But that's only because then they can exploit it. That's the only reason why.
Yeah, they'll exploit it until it's not new anymore, and then they go to the next thing. It's a life in the fast lane, I think. You know.
Right, but by me doing this, it's like I'm breaking all that bullshit. I'm like, wait a minute, hold the phone, fuck you, fuck off. I'm telling you, they haven't seen the likes of me. I'm coming through like they never saw before. I'm from Boston. I've got thrown out of strip clubs by my neck into street. Nothing fucking scares me. And also, once I did that in Vegas and I saw that the audience was, I was like, oh, they've been keeping us muzzled. The audience cares. I never got the support from the audience because I never broke the silence. I never talked about it.
Right.
And so now I'm talking about it, and then it uplifts us all. So the thing about the age, I'm telling you, that is such a secret bullshit. And everybody has, the thing about the age that,
well, you know, there was a Writers Guild suit about AN actually did this.
They sued who?
Suit.
Who did?
They sued. They sued. They did. I don't know. I have to look it up.
I'm going to Google it.
There was an ageism lawsuit that the Writers Guild did that I think some guys won some compensation for. And you know, I've heard people say, you know, too old. So it's they don't say it about the A-list people, you know, who's our name brands. But if you're not a name brand, you know, they would definitely, you all look like if you're not a name brand, you know, you're subject to all these all the prejudices and all the different, you know, it was like people used to say, oh, blacks are equally represented in Hollywood because look at Denzel Washington. Well, no.
Right.
You know, no, that's one person.
But that's their inherent racism. That's their inherent ageism. So somebody who's afraid to get old because we've been fed that is going to judge somebody that way. So what I want to do is just take it off the table and go, I'm telling you, it's the stupidest fucking thing. I've been saying this for years. I'm like, who invented that getting old is bad? Because everybody's getting old. Even the person that invented that, I'm like, why would you invent a fear that it's going to happen to you? I'm like, I could see when you have something that somebody else doesn't have. So it's almost like it's like when the oppressed becomes the oppressor. Everybody's holding everybody back. It's not real. It's like and it's not even real in front of our eyes. The president's 78 years old. It's the highest office in the country. Why can't you be a writer if you're 60 years old? It's fucking bullshit. It's so stupid. And the other thing I wanted to say was when you said the pendulum swings, I do agree that sometimes that's the way change happens. I want to keep talking about how when the pendulum swings, though, they use that as an opportunity to not really do change, to not do change. They do a broad sweeping thing, and then they go back to the other way.
Like, we did our part. Exactly. Yes. Because, you know, the powers that be are still white men. Even if you've got women in the producing positions, even if you've got women in the development positions, the people on the board who control the purse strings are primarily either white men, older white, or women who are there, who are of a different class than you and I. You know, I mean, they're wealthy, and so they have completely different agendas than the creative people who are actually doing the work. So it's not, you know, I always say this, and I would love to do a documentary on
in medicine as well. So this is my friend Patricia's a nurse in medicine as well. I think it's happening. It's happening everywhere with women everywhere.
Really?
Everywhere.
Wow.
Everywhere. Yeah. It's not just Hollywood. It's everywhere. And that's what I think, like the actresses, it's like all the workers everywhere are like, me too. But the actresses aren't really doing it for the workers. The actors are doing it for the actors. Like they're not really going out of their way to go to UPS.
But actors, women actors, I mean, you know, they have an expiration
actors. Date. They're what?
Actors.
I know. I fixed it.
But I mean, female actors have an expiration date. You know, I mean, unless you're a character actor, you are going to be, if you're playing leads, you're going to be out of the character actor, out of your.
It's 9 o'clock.
Sorry. Oh my gosh, it's 9.
All right.
You're going to be out of your age range. You know, you're going to be put on the shelf. You sort of disappear between, like, I don't know, like late 30s to, you know, mid 50s, and then suddenly you're the grandmother.
Oh, that's interesting.
You know, I mean, really, it's so, you know, what are you going to do? I mean, so many great actresses have to just end their careers because they were stars, and they were, you know, maybe partially hired on their looks, and now they're older and nobody wants them anymore. Because,
well, that's the trade-off. That's what we were talking about the femininity. Like, I'm trading it off, but I'm not realizing long-term what the consequences are. Instead of nowadays, we're going to start talking about it and be like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not
Yeah.
trading off my femininity because then I'm going to fuck myself, because then I'm not I'm trading off a commodity that's going to go away
That's what
instead of.
my mother always used to tell me that. She always said, looks fade, brains don't.
Yes.
And
I'm telling you right now, Mark Maron edited out of my WTF that I said I want to show younger girls that you can be cooler and cooler the older you get. He edited that out of my fucking WTF. He cut it out. He told me he wasn't going to cut anything out, that it was never going to get edited. He edited it. I told him he fucking edited it. He told me he didn't edit it, and then they sent me the unedited version. You want to talk about gaslighting? They cut out the fact that I said that I want to be cooler as I get older so younger girls can look that it doesn't get awful the older you get. He fucking cut it out.
No, it shouldn't, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a competition. And from the other side, older women need to just like accept that that we're getting older, and we can mentor younger women, and we can hopefully have them avoid some of the issues that we had to come across.
Well, and keep straight flexing too, because the rules are in our head.
I'm glad you think that.
I do. I'm telling you, I've been breaking rules everywhere. I'm like, since I was a kid, my father's friend said, don't go out that gate. I go, you're not my father. And I walked out the gate. And ever since I was little, I've been saying to everybody, you're not my father. I remember this guy from a casino. He called me. I was on the phone with him standing up because I got sexually harassed. And I told him to fuck off. And he goes, don't you ever call me again. And I stood over my sink and I was shaking. He hung up on me and I was shaking. And I go, he's not my father. And I called him back and he answered and I laughed so hard. I go, I thought you told me never to call you again. And he answered the phone. So there's a part of me with all my work, I'm busting through. I'm just going a little further. I'm like, well, what happens? Like when they say, you better watch your mouth. I go, you better watch your ears. And then they go, uh-oh.
I have a very different style. But
which is what?
I'm just not. I think I was raised. I think I internalized a lot of my mother's. Women are silent and
don't have accents.
Humble, don't have accents, and humble, and there's just the way she was with my dad. I think that I really did internalize that we're in some ways here to serve men, and even though my life was a push against that, somewhere it's still there. And I think, I used to say, I remember I said for years, I used to say, I'm really great with working with difficult men. It's like, why would I want to work with difficult men?
Exactly. I used to be good at it too.
Now I'm like, okay, you're done. but back then I was just so proud of that fact that I could work with difficult men who would throw tantrums and, be like little babies and need extra care. And I used to be like, oh, I'm really good with those guys. And I was, but what's that to be proud of?
No, I know. Same with me with stand-up. Like I had David O. Russell. I handled David O. Russell and Christian Bale. David O. Russell was mad at Christian Bale. Instead of being mad at Christian Bale, he fucking dumped on me. Didn't even flinch. I didn't even flinch. But I saved that movie tons of money on my back. I didn't get any of that money. Same thing on Tough Crowd. Dennis O'Leary and Geraldo almost got into a fist fight. I broke up the fight. Les Moonves, same thing. My first pilot that I shot with him, he's like, where's Costello's personality? Jim Burrows was directing me. I'm like, Jim Burrows is the director. I'm like, what are you talking about? I fucking saved the whole pilot. He fired Elliot Douglas. I showed up. I saved the whole pilot. I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I why am I the cleaner for men? I'm not doing that anymore. So there's a switch that has to happen.
Again, I think, you're a little bit younger than me, but I think we're like, it's like, for me, it was just a generational thing that I internalized, even though I didn't believe it. A part of me didn't believe it, and a part of me was raised not to be like that. But part of me just internalized it. And so that's why I'm not like an in-your-face person as much. But it's interesting. I had to pitch somebody on the phone a project, and it was two men, and one of them was so like, because I'm like, no, this is how I see it. And they got very quiet after I said that. And one of them goes, well, I guess it's good when people challenge me.
And they're saying it out loud.
They were hiring me to write and direct something. So it's up to me to say, okay, no, you're hiring me for my opinions, right? For my talent, my opinions. So you want me to just say, yes, I agree with you when I don't? I can, if it's your American Express card, I'll eventually do what you want.
Right.
But you're going to tell me to muzzle my opinions when that's what you're hiring me for?
I think sometimes it's unconscious that they don't realize that they're
they do a lot of times. Yeah.
I don't and that's why I think it's good that we're waking up, and even this conversation that we're having right now, I guarantee you're going to be like, yeah, and you're making the connections with our moms. I mean, yes, but our moms are like, they didn't get to do what we're doing. There's a lot of emotions that go on underneath that, and a lot of like, be quiet. And when you step out from not being quiet, you're like, it's terrifying sometimes.
It is very terrifying, but
yeah,
you know, I try not to have anything to hide, and I think life goes better that way. You know, when you're just honest and out.
Well, I respect you being honest about using your femininity. I respect you're saying that you wish you had a career like Ava. I respect that kind of honesty. I feel like you don't get that a lot of times.
But see, I can wish I do and still think she's wonderful.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Still like dance on the table that she has it.
Yes, that's real life.
That's adulthood. You know, it's not like, oh, I'm so jealous because that person got something I didn't get. It's like, no, how do I make that for myself? Or how do I celebrate that they did?
Mm-hmm.
That's really adulthood. And I think jealousy and that kind of envy, and I've never had it really. But I have had resentment when, you know, like especially like in the 90s, when like some kid out of film school gets a project, you know, and I've been behind the camera for thousands of hours and, you know, would never be even considered because it was some hot guy out of film school who made a hot film. But that's the business. I mean, you have.
But I always say, if you see a woman who you think is good at something, she's 75,000 times better than what you're seeing from what she had to do to get there.
Possibly, yeah. I think that's possible.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Well, that was amazing.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate it so much. Good luck. Tell everybody the website again for your.
Yeah, it's www.americandignity.com. AmericanDignityPAC.com. And you can see all the episodes of our film except one, and we're going to put it all together very shortly. Like right now, our editor's on vacation, so we have to take a break because we have like no money, and we're piecemealing together the ending. But it's it doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like we only spent like $150,000 on it. It doesn't look like it at all, and that's because a lot of people gave their talent and their time and their resources because they cared too. And it's an important story, especially now, you know, because, you know, we have to live with each other, half the country, and we have to live with each other. So let's find a way to persuade the persuadables.
There you go. What about your Twitter? Your Twitter is what?
Oh, it's Melissa J. Peltier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Follow her. She's very, very, very informative.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I think you're awesome on there. I love it. That's how I got you on here. I told my assistant to go ask you. I think you're amazing. Well, I appreciate your time. All right.
Yeah, I was always told that. Hold on 2 seconds. I was always told that. And never ever give your political views on social media. And I was told that like by my partners when I had my company and all that kind of thing. So I used to just use social media for like promotion, you know, that kind of thing. And then Trump got elected and I was like, what the hell? You know, if not now, when?
Exactly. It's time for us to start talking and not stop. All right. Thank you very much. That was the 4th episode of Women Crush Wednesdays. We'll have to get your partner on here too.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Mary Carey.
Bye. Nice to meet you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Watch Sue TV. Watch Sue TV, you guys. Every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 5 p.m. My Venmo is at I am Sue Costello. We're building Sue TV network over here. I'm going to stop Man Crush Wednesdays. Any little bit helps. I love you. Thanks for your time. I'll see you next week. Bye.